Borderlands 3 is on Green Man Gaming. Yeah, an Epic exclusive on a third-party key reseller. That's something that they previously did not support. Yet when you actually dig into all of this and what's really going on, it's quite the rabbit hole indeed. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Okay, e-commerce, look. It's not the sexiest topic in the universe. You mightn't think it's that thrilling, but trust me, this is all super relevant. This is stuff that impacts you on a daily basis. It's the lifeblood of much of our industry, especially when Epic and Steam are compared. So today we're going to go through two important topics. Number one, the impact of payment processors on these stores, especially Epic. And number two, third-party key resellers, how Epic seem to be opening up and what that means for you. Okay, payment processors. We've got a pretty important part of the Epic store that is not talked about that much overall, especially in how it compares to Steam, and a difference between the two companies. This is likely not something that's being felt by most of the people watching this video because most of us have access to a debit card, a credit card, or a PayPal account with a connected bank account. Why is this important? Well, you know, for us, if we were to purchase a game in the Epic Games Store that says it costs £45, we'd be charged £45. That is not the experience felt by many people who instead have to use a different payment processor, like say PaySafeCard, mobile payments, or web money, with the last two being pretty widely used in Eastern European countries. Now, what's interesting here is how both Valve and Epic have decided to deal with this situation and those payment processors. You see, many of those processors have higher payment processing charges, and Epic actually charge the customer for that. Why is this? Well, they run an 88-12 split. Of that 12% split, about 5.5% is cost. So the 12% split is still super profitable, but only for payment processors with lower fees. The likes of PaySafeCard are more expensive, meaning that for some purchases, and to be clear, the minority overall, but they would actually be at a significantly lower profit margin. Because of this, Epic include a payment processing charge on your base game price if you use some of those methods. So a £45 game might have a 5% markup, potentially even more on the more expensive payment processors. Now, this does not really impact countries that have really high credit card adoption, but that's not the case for all countries. And what's interesting is how Valve handle this very differently. They actually eat the cost of the higher processing fees inside their 30% fee. So overall, Valve's 30% is still extremely profitable, far more so than Epic's, even with them eating the cost of those additional processing fees, but it does show how the companies have chosen to really have the same problem but approach it differently. And it teaches us a little bit about e-commerce, and that's something that's worth knowing given how important it is for our industry. Of course, once Valve get down to their 20% revenue split for games over $50 million in revenue, the payment processing is more of an issue, but that's not a massive problem. And this is going to be quite the industry challenge, especially when we're taking on emerging markets. Take India, right? So in India, there's a small number of PayPal-like apps that are widely used. Now, look at how, say, in the UK or the EU, we have contactless for everything. We use it everywhere. But over there, it's their PayPal equivalent that's used everywhere. Now, as our stores expand into those markets, well, they're going to run into a fairly large issue, especially with the regional pricing, making a lot of those emerging markets worth a bit less. It's quite amazing, really, how much of our digital economy is in the hands of a relatively small number of payment providers, and indeed, how much those providers have a lot of power. For an example, take a few of the more notable Patreon account closures that happened at the tail end of last year. I think, what was it, Peter Boghossian maybe? But that was down to MasterCard, not Patreon. And this presents even more of a problem for Valve than it would for Epic. Epic curate their store a bit more, but for Valve, until recently, they had a very staunch, we're a platform only sort of stance, and that could have them come into conflict with their payment providers. So yes, your own policies matter really a lot less if you work with MasterCard, and it turns out MasterCard won't support types of content on your platform. Now, the viability of an 88-12 split is another factor with this, because if Epic ate another 5 or 10%, they'd be, you know, running, well, less of a profit or maybe even a loss. Now, sure, it only impacts some countries, but many of those countries are ones that publishers want to expand into. Now, by passing it on to the customer, well, that's one route to go with, but it does make their store less able to compete with Steam, and for Epic exclusives, it does make those games a less attractive proposition because of the higher sale price. But next, let's move on to another part of e-commerce, and this is third-party key sellers. It's a pretty interesting system, actually. So a developer can generate Steam keys and have, say, Green Man Gaming sell those keys. So Green Man sell the key, a user enters the key, or it's done automatically, And Valve makes zero money. Valve actually does not charge for activations or for their bandwidth. So in allowing those keys to be generated and sold on third-party sites, Valve actually heavily eat into their own potential revenue by giving people more options. What's even worse though for Valve's bottom line, but is better for consumers, is that those third-party sites can then compete with each other, driving down the price of a game even, against Steam, making the official Steam price less competitive. Sometimes those sites will even work with a payment provider like PaySafeCard to offer a further discount, meaning that it really can get the price a lot below Steam's. Of course, the likes of, say, Green Man Gaming will probably have fewer overheads than Valve, so they're better able to afford it. Well, Epic did not support this until quite recently, but they did recently announce their support for Humble. They seemingly have expanded this across at least over to Green Man Gaming, who are now offering Borderlands 3, an Epic timed exclusive for pre-order. Now, unlike Valve, I'm fairly sure that developers can't just issue keys out of nowhere. I think it is just for supported stores right now, and I assume that like with Valve, Epic don't charge for the service, though of course it's impossible to know, and I imagine that anyone who is in the know here is probably locked into an NDA. Now, here's the interesting part of all of this. Green Man charges 30%, at least according to what is officially there online, so selling a game in GMG is a 70-30 split, the same as Steam. So that's exactly what the Epic stores say they're there to end. So does that mean that a copy of Borderlands 3 sold in Green Man gets Gearbox and, 2K 70% of the sale, or is there something else going on here? It's kind of impossible to know. It very much could be that Epic, are charging a key activation service, something small like that, but if they do that, they might end up leaving the developer somewhat out of the picture, stuck with a 70% cut from GMG, down from the 88% of the Epic Game Store. So by doing this, Epic, they're actually allowing for more competition at a less favorable revenue split for the developer involved, we think so far. What does this actually mean? Well, it could mean a hell of a lot. It could be that Epic have seen lower adoption for Borderlands 3 and have responded by opening up this part of the market. Ultimately, that might not be great for 2K, but it would drive more store adoption for Epic. It could be that this always was the plan, with Epic knowing that a vibrant third-party market is essential to keeping their platform going. Now, for consumers, it does offer a solution to the problem we outlined at the start of the video, and that is the payment processors, because opening up to the third-party sites will allow for more broad payment processor support, which is a big problem the Epic Games Store has had, with those charges perhaps not being passed on to the consumer. Overall, this is a great situation for many people who right now are particularly burned by the payment processor side of the Epic Store. Additionally, many of these third-party sites have their own built-in features, cashback programs and things like that further drive down the cost of games. So I'm going to be extremely keen to see how deep Green Man Gaming go with their Borderlands 3 discount. I know that much. Their current 15% off deal does not extend to Borderlands 3, so personally I wonder, do those Borderlands 3 keys for GMG, do they come with stipulations? How much freedom do they have on their pricing? We don't know yet, and it'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. Overall, though, it's a positive development. We're seeing Epic open up quite a bit more, which could allow for more competition. Now, of course, you still would need to activate the game on Epic's platform if you bought it through Green Man Gaming, at least for Epic Game exclusives that are not DRM-free. I believe the likes of Borderlands 3, of course, will require the Epic launcher, though I do know that Phoenix Point is, I believe, DRM-free, so you could actually add its EXE to your Steam library manually if you wanted to benefit from the platform benefits of Steam. So there you go. Very interesting developments for the Epic Games Store and how the e-commerce sort of landscape is shifting and changing a little bit. And yeah, it's not the juiciest stuff either, which I think is why it's not covered that much, but really e-commerce, this is the process by which everything is sold. It's a very, very important part of the overall, games industry, and it really does impact the decisions that these companies make. Having a few percent skimmed off the top of everything certainly is a lot, like with the payment processing. So yeah, we'll just, we see everybody deal with it slightly differently, and opening up to third-party key resellers, that probably is a good thing for the Epic Games Store. It's opening up a little bit. We'll just need to wait and see how far that goes. So, there you go. That is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you thought down below, and with that, I'll see you next time.